Good morning and welcome. We're here with Dr. Sketas. Dr. Sketas, tell us a little bit about who you are and how you have arrived serving our local community.
Sure thing. My name is Dr. Greg Sketas. I grew up in Conway and actually went to high school at the Math and Science School in Hot Springs. So after I went to medical school at UAMS in Little Rock, I decided I loved Hot Springs so much I wanted to come back here and work. So here I am.
Awesome. Well, hey, we've got a few questions regarding the vaccine, the process, and so we're really wanting to kind of share with our community some questions around the vaccine. The first thing here is I would ask you, can the COVID vaccine alter DNA?
No, that's not how it works. So this is something I routinely counsel my patients on. I like to give a little metaphor if we have a minute.
Sure.
So if the human body is composed of these little tiny compartments with cells, and you can think of a cell like your property. You got your house in the middle, you got your yard, and you got your fence on the outside, right? So what's supposed to happen is the person inside the house gives instructions to the folks working in the yard to help take care of what's going on in the yard. Well, the COVID vaccine is like a phone call. What happens is the people working in the yard get a phone call from somebody, and that phone call says, hey, you need to paint the fence a different color. So they go off and paint the fence. That phone call, though, never makes it inside the house. Now, bringing it back to the medical world, that house is a little compartment where your DNA is stored. That vaccine never enters that house. It just stays in the yard, and after it gives its message, it goes away. Now, the benefit of the vaccine is that once the person in the yard paints the fence, what happens is that triggers the immune system. It says, hey, wait a minute, something looks different over here. Let's increase our surveillance and see what's going on with this. So then when actual COVID becomes a threat in the neighborhood, you've painted the fence, you've alerted the neighborhood watch, and all of a sudden, you're not just blinded by this, you're ready to have a surveillance system ready to go.
Okay. Hey, well, I appreciate that analogy. Hopefully that will create some clarity around, the element of DNA. Something else that's often brought up is the impact of the COVID vaccine around, does it cause infertilities, our younger population? Can you share with us a little bit about sterility and fertility? Is there an impact?
Yeah, that would be a really scary thing if that were the case. We've done some small studies. So there was a small study of about 80 men who donated some sperm before and after they got the COVID vaccine. There was no difference in the amount of sperm or the function of the sperm, as far as we can tell. So it doesn't really affect the sperm as far as we know, but this is still relatively new and they're only small case studies. That being said, none of those people in the studies were affected. So I, at this point, believe it's safe as far as from a male's perspective.
Okay.
In vitro fertilization has also been studied, and there's been no evidence that having the vaccine impacts your ability to successfully in vitro fertilize. And lastly, it's actually recommended for pregnant patients. So you can go ahead and get your COVID vaccine just like you can get your flu vaccine during pregnancy, and it doesn't impact the level of miscarriages, but it does give the fetus, as well as the baby once they're born, some antibodies to start life off with. So the newborn babies are actually protected against COVID coming out of the womb.
Okay, that's very good to know.
Yeah.
It kind of coinciding that with the vaccine, there's some concerns that people think they actually will cause them to get COVID. So kind of explain that process. We receive the vaccine. Can we get COVID with the vaccine itself?
Sure. So once upon a time, we used live viruses to basically introduce small amounts of sickness to people, and that's how they would react and grow a response to. Nowadays, we don't do that anymore. So back to my little house metaphor, it's literally a cell phone call. There's no weakened version of the virus. It's just a set of instructions as far as what the body needs to build in order to start protecting itself. There's no actual viral particle in there. So you can't get COVID from the vaccine. Recently, we've seen where people get the vaccine and then they get COVID shortly afterwards. We're in a pandemic. This thing is spreading again. It's truly just bad timing as far as we can tell. That's very unfortunate. But it will protect you against getting COVID in the first place. And if you get it, it actually protects you from getting into a severe state requiring you to go into the hospital.
Okay. So describe some of the side effects that might occur with the COVID vaccine.
Sure. So the vaccine's making you do a little bit more work than some of the more typical traditional vaccines. With the COVID vaccine, you have to make things, and then you have to react to the things that you make. That's an extra step. Typically with some of the more traditional vaccines, they put the thing you're trying to react to and then you react to it. So the process of building something and then reacting takes more energy. You're going to have flu-like symptoms, muscle aches, you're going to have some chills perhaps, some fatigue. Some people may have some joint aches, maybe even a little nausea or headache. Typically these symptoms though only last for about a day to 3 days or so, and then they go away. People are really fearing these side effects. You're probably likely going to have some side effects. However, because it's not the actual virus, these will go away. If you get the actual virus, you're rolling the dice as far as how long your symptoms last, or even if you need to go into the hospital or not. I don't know of any cases where the vaccines cause people to go in the hospital. I've seen lots of death with people who have COVID because I work at a hospital.
Right.
So between the two, I'd rather go with the temporary mild case rather than rolling the dice with the actual deal.
Okay. Kind of on the scientific side of things, kind of describe for us, since if it lacks full FDA approval, is it unsafe? And kind of describe the situation in which we're in.
Sure. So that's as a result of this being a brand new phenomenon in the world and there being a global emergency. The emergency use authorization was given to us back in December of 2020 for the Pfizer vaccine. And the only reason they were able to give that is because Pfizer was able to demonstrate that the vaccines worked and that they were safe. Mm-hmm. So after a certain time frame, you're then eligible to submit a request for full authorization. That, in fact, has been done with both Pfizer and Moderna back in May and June.
Okay.
That process takes about 10 months for the FDA to review. And so while I hear the concern and that makes sense, there just simply hasn't been enough time for everything to go through the bureaucracy. Mm-hmm. That's being addressed currently.
Okay. And then, who do you recommend getting the vaccine? Vaccine eligibility now is at age 12 and up. Who would you recommend give consideration to the vaccine, and what steps would you recommend they go through prior to immunization?
Sure. So basically anybody. And the reason for that is you're going to get COVID and you're going to give COVID to everybody you interact with. So if you interact with everybody, there's a chance you could get hurt yourself or hurt somebody else, even accidentally. And so I recommend it routinely to most people, unless you have one of the few what we call contraindications, which means one of the few reasons to not get a vaccine. That would be if you have a reaction to the vaccine in the past, or if you're currently sick, such as if you have a fever right now, or if you have COVID right now, we want to wait till you get better before giving the vaccine. There's not really any medicines you need to give routinely prior to getting the vaccine. Some people have said, well, maybe a Tylenol will help and not feel as bad. And if you want to try that, that's probably not going to hurt you. But you can just go get your vaccine. You may feel a little bit sore for the next few days, but stay well hydrated and do your best to rest, and after that, you should be good to go.
Currently, as far as availability of vaccine, can you kind of describe what that process looks like now versus originally? Is the availability, is it out there and available for everyone? There was a wait list initially. Can you give us a description of what can occur and how quickly you could become vaccinated?
Sure. So the vaccine was being produced and utilized basically as soon as it was being produced when it first came out. Mm-hmm. We have 177 million people vaccinated in America right now, and so that started with our highest need folks. Now that they're for the most part taken care of, it's widely available. You can call Walgreens, Walmart, the local pharmacy next door at Fountain Lake Family Pharmacy, and they can hook you up with the vaccine same day.
Okay.
I would call ahead just to make sure that they have some in stock, and that's for anywhere you go, but most places carry it and they're ready to go.
And then one final question is there's been some discussion around the single shot versus the double shot. Anything you want to elaborate there on the availability of vaccine and what, is there one more effective than the other? That's been a big discussion as well. Which one should I obtain?
Yeah. So I would love to say that it's a one and done kind of phenomenon, but what we found is that the first time around you get a response, it's just not as robust a response as if you did something a second time. And that just makes sense. The more practice you get at something, the better you get at doing it, and that includes with your immune system too. So the double shot is exceptionally more effective than just a single shot.
Okay.
But something's better than nothing. So if you have the first shot and you have an extreme reaction that limits you from getting the second shot, at least you have the one in you. But I would strongly recommend going in and completing the regimen with the two.
Okay. Well, hey, Dr. Sketas, it's been a pleasure visiting with you, and appreciate you sharing this information, and maybe we can get together again and talk about other related medical issues.
Absolutely.
It's been Dr. Michael Murphy, serving as school superintendent, and it's been a pleasure to visit with Dr. Sketas here at the Fountain Lake Family Medical Clinic. Thank you very much for listening.